why I love this job, is because these people are so passionate about making sure that these children get served. All children. It doesn't matter, like I said, economic status. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter. It matters that these children have the same opportunities as their permanently housed peers. So
I'm Dr. Stephanie Wilson. I'm a historian, an activist, and the host of the Freedom Over Fascism podcast, where we talk to people who give us insight into the current political moment, inspiration for state and local organizing, and connections with our co-conspirators all across the country. You'll meet rural organizers who focus on electing young and diverse candidates, independent journalists who prioritize democracy over disinformation, and candidates building change at the state and local level. I invite you to join the Freedom Over Fascism community and listen to Freedom Over Fascism wherever you get your podcasts.
Everyone for joining Politics for Parents. I'm really excited to talk to you today because I know you, Bernadette, are looking to expand awareness about a really important federal program that supports children that I think are probably some of the most vulnerable children in our society. So we're talking about homeless youth and homeless students specifically, and the McKinney-Vento Act, which is a federal program that aims to support children when they're support homeless students, rather. So the McKinney-Vento Act supports homeless students in our public school system, and we're here with Bernadette Knoll, who has knowledge and experience with this program. So Bernadette, thank you for joining today, and I would love to just kind of get an intro to you and your background. I know you're a social worker. You're also a grief recovery specialist. I think you also have a book out. But I'd love to know about kind of your background and the expertise you bring to this subject.
thank you so much for having me, Nicole. I'm so excited to be here. It means so much to me because I feel like you're my wish come true. I really believe
thank you.
in expanding what I didn't know as an educator. So some background is, when I was in fourth grade, I told my mother I wanted to be a teacher so I can show teachers what it's like to be a real teacher. And that's from the social emotional piece, because I was very sensitive as a child. Okay. And so that's where that came from. And since then, I've had this advocacy for making sure the voices of all of our children are recognized, heard, listened to, and just being in the same space with them. So that's where that comes from. I don't remember that story. My mom does though. And so then, I'm a teacher, former educator for over 20 something years. My son says, you should say 25 or 30. And I'm just like, okay, teaching, little preschool kids. And he says, no, that counts too. So preschool through college, urban, suburban, rural, private, public, and international school settings. And I say that because of this McKinney-Vento law. I also have my master's degree in education. And there were two things that I did not know about. And when I discovered them, I am like, why did I not know about this? And one of them was this law, McKinney-Vento, and the other one is supporting children with loss, any kind of loss. So the two go hand in hand. So that's my other role right now. I'm a grief recovery method specialist. I'm an educator on grief for any kind of loss. So there's over 40 something different kinds of losses. I was certified through the Grief Recovery Institute. It's the only evidence-based grief recovery program in the world. And there's different programs, and I do seminars on that as well. And what I usually do is blend the McKinney-Vento piece with the education piece, because when you lose a home, you're having a loss, you're grieving.
Of course.
And so it's hard to have someone continue to move forward in our society when that grief hasn't been held or looked at or examined or given space for that. So that's a little bit of a background on myself.
And I kind of, you just said something that resonated with me, because I think theoretically, that concept may escape people. They may not necessarily understand the grieving component of, a child losing their home in a situation where their housing situation is unstable. But I would ask any parents to think about, I know we've talked about potentially moving or renovating our house, right? And that's like a first class problem to have, right? But if we talk about moving, my daughter gets so upset because this is the only home she's known. And even if we were to leave this house to move to some amazing mansion, like she would still be upset and feel a sense of loss.
Yes.
And there's actually a Bluey episode about this, which has gotten some criticism. I'm not sure why, but it's like Bluey's family goes through, like her dad gets a new job and they have to move. And it's really, they do display the grief that the family feels over moving. Again, but that's like a good situation to be moving.
Right.
Um, so I just kind of want to highlight that because I think it's really important for people to think about how your own kids would feel if you moved for a good reason, let alone,
Yeah,
you lose your house. And there's a lot of instability probably in the background beyond that.
absolutely.
So that's really important to think about. And I think that also brings really important context to the meaningfulness of this law, right?
Yes. And I think just to, first of all, thank you for saying all that and yay, Bluey, uh, because that's what's needed. Like I said, going back to that fourth grade story, there
Yep.
was no Bluey. We did not talk about grief, loss. Nobody knew. Maybe we knew it. My Gen X generation was push through it, be strong. Okay.
Yes.
And so when I came, the reason why, to tie this all in, the reason why I came into becoming a grief recovery method specialist is because myself personally, I had a fire in my house last year. And I took the job as McKinney-Vento navigator in January. The fire happened in February. And this house took me 13 years to get on my own. I'm a single parent. I had it for 4 years and the fire happened. And so it hit hard. And all of those losses. So talk about like what you just said, right? Dad or mom has a new job. It shifts everything, right? So what they say is grief is two top definitions. Grief is the normal and natural reaction. Okay. So normal, natural
Mm-hmm.
reaction, emotion, right? To any significant loss. Okay. So that's one. And natural is important. So it's natural to be mad. It's natural to be angry. It's
Right.
natural to be sad. But where do we put that in our society? So then jumping back to McKinney-Vento, kids who have lost their home,
Mm-hmm.
right? They didn't plan on that. It
Yep.
happened. So it's normal and natural. They're either their emotions are going to go internal or
Mm-hmm.
they're going to go external. And if they're external, what are they? A discipline problem. If they're internal, they're a mental health issue, right?
Right.
So is taking a look at all that as well. And so the second definition, and this ties in to McKinney-Vento and to what we're speaking of, right? Grief is the normal and natural reaction to any significant loss and to any change in a familiar pattern of behavior.
Okay.
Wow, right?
Yeah.
So you have these children who are in their home, and McKinney-Vento covers children who, most people, when they think of homeless, let's backtrack a sec. Most people, when they think of homeless, like myself,
Mm-hmm.
it's the Google definition. It's the stereotypical, Hallmark movie or, of on the street, right?
Right.
And it's typically you see these, like just Google. Anybody who's watching this, go Google homeless. And
Yeah.
that image is what's put in our head. And that's makes sense because our brain needs to categorize things. So McKinney-Vento is that HUD definition, okay? Housing urban development, that's their definition. People out on the streets, okay?
Okay.
Living in cardboard boxes. That's part of McKinney-Vento as well. McKinney-Vento includes also if you are living in a hotel,
Mm-hmm.
if you are couch surfing, as they say, okay? But
Right.
couch surfing, not in the cool way. Couch surfing meaning like there's you and your kids are living on a couch, doubling up. Okay, I
Right.
had to do that as well when I had a divorce and I didn't have a place to sleep. So I returned to my parents' home with my two kids. They were both under the age of 5,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in one room, a bunk bed, and another bed. That's doubling up. That would have been McKinney-Vento. So kids in public school, that happened to me. I had a divorce, and I didn't have a place to go. I did not have a place to go. My kids would have been supported by this law. So again, a familiar pattern of behavior. They had a home, they had a cat, they had a backyard, and then they didn't. Everything has to go someplace. Our car ended up getting repossessed. The house is, I'm packing things up with my kids and my mom. And so those are losses,
Yeah.
they were so upset. And that's grief, and there's feelings there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's space that's needed for all of that. So that's how I got into becoming a grief recovery method specialist, because I was personally going through it last year through the fire, trying to navigate. And I was privileged, I have a home with a mortgage, but I still lived in 3 different hotels in 6 weeks, and then trying to find a rental. And the housing market is really hard right now for people
Yeah.
to find a place to live. And then when I was going to not return to my house because I wasn't sure how it was going to be, I was looking for another place to live. Right now, mortgages are the interest rate is high.
Yes.
The rent for a 2-bedroom was higher than my mortgage for a townhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things to consider, people are having those stresses as well, the parents, while they're looking for a home. So you need support and help. And that's where the McKinney-Vento liaisons come in, that are in every single school district, in every single county, in every single state in the United States of America.
Right. So there's a lot, like any federal program, there's a lot of components to this. But for our listeners, I do just want to kind of summarize quickly. So the McKinney-Vento law is really about keeping children in their like current school district, despite if they move due to homelessness. Am I getting that correctly? I think to me, it sounds like this is a stabilizing actor.
Yes, it is.
At a time of massive destabilization. And we're using federal funds to help the school districts navigate this, right? It's not the onus on the public school district to keep kids that no longer live in the district. This is kind of like a stopgap to help just provide stability, as well as supporting, that institution that has to kind of, navigate this.
Yes. So going back to that definition, so there's another little caveat to that, is that, so remember we said, right, grief is the normal natural reaction to any significant loss, and when there's a change, a familiar pattern behavior, right? School, what is school? A familiar pattern of behavior, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So I get goosebumps saying this because I get so excited, because that's what we want. Even if they don't like school, it is what's their familiar. And so if they can have the majority of their day stay where they are, while all this chaos and, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa are taking care of stuff, okay, the law's designed. The number one thing I bring is to eliminate barriers to education for children who are temporarily housed, so that they can have the same opportunities as their permanently housed peers. So I had a fire. My children, they're 20 and 23 right now. If they were younger, if they were in public school, just using myself as an example, okay, we lived in Somerset County. And when we were in Somerset County, the fire happened. We had to go move into hotels. Those hotels were still in Somerset County, but they were about 25 minutes away. My children, the school district has funding, and that's why it's important to count McKinney-Vento and to identify yourself and say, hey, I need help here, okay? And so I would go to the liaison and say, hey, I had a fire. We need some support here. They would go and connect with the funding stream, okay? There's Title I and there's McKinney-Vento funding. And then you say, okay, Bernadette, okay, we're going to provide transportation from the hotel to the school, right? Go to another hotel. That's what happened. Okay, now we're going to do that. So I, the parent, need to stay in communication with the liaison to keep them updated with what's going on. That's my responsibility. Then when we had the rental, that was in another county. Transportation still is provided for the children. And we lost everything, right? So guess what? They need some shoes, they need some clothing. That liaison has resources in the community that can bring that to the parent and the children. Okay, they need to go on a class trip, and maybe, funding was lost by the parent. Guess what? That's provided under McKinney-Vento. Uniforms, computers, Wi-Fi, whatever is needed so that child can be the same as his other peers or her other peers or their other peers. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's far more comprehensive than I had initially understood it to be. And it's great to hear that because that is precisely, I mean, as parents, we all know how important these things are and how expensive they are. And I mean, I joke with my friends, I hate shopping because I'm always doing it for my kids. They always need something, they're growing. So I think, we can all appreciate how important these supports are. Um, and, one thing you mentioned is, you lived in a hotel temporarily after your fire. Um, we do have a lot of people in New Jersey that live in motels. I mean, there
Yes,
are a lot of people that lose housing that live in motels.
absolutely.
I've known several of them through my own, volunteer work. I live in Monmouth County. There are a lot of people here that don't realize it. It's kind of hidden. But,
Yes,
this is a type of situation for those families that in an
yes,
incredibly expensive state to live in with rapidly rising housing costs,
yes,
as you experienced, this is really important. Um, and
absolutely.
you mentioned that it's temporarily housed. So, while these families are figuring out and maybe bouncing around hotels, this is a stabilizing force until they finally figure out like um, like, permanent residence. Is there any type of time, like restriction? Is it 6 months or do they define temporary by time or is it just, they
It's
don't have a permanent home?
They don't have until they get permanently housed. So
Okay.
it's, and the reason, so for example, however, there's a big however,
Okay.
okay? And however is this, meaning every case is different. And so each time there's like little intricacies, okay? So it doesn't matter whether you have nothing or you are a millionaire. There's millionaires that have been McKinney-Vento, okay? So
Mhm.
has nothing to do with your financial background. It
Okay.
has to do where that child's head is being placed,
Yes.
okay? And it can be for natural disaster,
Okay.
right? It can be for fire. It can be for economic reasons. It can be for if you're in a shelter, okay? If someone, whether it's because of a DV situation or not, okay? However, this is a
And
big
DV, for those who maybe don't know, domestic violence, right?
violence.
Yes.
Okay. And so, true story, side note, before I say this next piece, is that this law saves lives, meaning
Right.
those literally a friend of mine who knows this is the work I do. She's like, what's that law thing that McDonald's? I'm like, no, not McKinney-Vento. And I know it's strange. So I just say that
Yeah.
temporary housing act for school. She has a family and the mother does not want to leave her abuser because she did not know that her kids can stay in the same school. She wanted to keep them in the
Wow.
school. So that's how deep this goes. And that's why this is personal to me,
Yeah.
because we're literally saving lives. So going now to the liaisons, going back to like their job also is to help get housing resources, to get mental health resources, to get all these resources for the parents and the kids to connect them with it. Okay. And the idea is if they, like right now, my director has somebody who has been living in a hotel, true story. Okay. Their child is autistic in a hotel, one room. Okay.
Oh
For
my
two
goodness.
years. Okay. So now the liaison has said, hey, this is not okay. What can we do to help? And the transportation has been a lot for this child. So it's one, what's in the best interest of the child regarding transportation. If the parents say, you know what, it's better for them to come with us, we'll start new, we'll handle it. Thank you, but no thank you. It's always a parent's right. Let's start with that. Two, connecting with the liaison is huge.
Right.
If they don't know, they will come to me or to my director. There's 5 regions in New Jersey. Every region has a director, and I can send in like links to all of New Jersey, all the liaisons
Perfect.
everywhere. Okay.
Yes.
It's so important that your school, every school the liaison is identified on the website and that there's flyers for parents, because this is the other part, Nicole, like for myself, I have my master's degree. I am been a teacher for X amount of years. No
Mhm.
matter what, when that fire happened, there was so much shame, there was so much embarrassment, so much emotional stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's hard to raise your hand and say, I need help.
Yes. And that's, I think, one of the probably intended benefits of this program being open and
Yeah.
not means tested, right? Not dependent upon your financial status, because it
Yes.
removes that stigma. Especially, I can imagine as a single mom who's worked really hard for her home. I have a single mom who worked very hard for hers as well.
Yeah.
And you're proud of that. So I think
Yes.
removing the stigma is a really important piece to these types of programs.
You named it. You named it because that's so my two pieces, like I shared with you before, two things that I was not trained as an educator was McKinney-Vento.
Hmm.
And most educators, go talk. Any of your parents watching out there, go ask the teachers and say, who's your McKinney-Vento liaison? And see if they know who it is for their school. And if they don't, say, hey, and you can give them the information. There's a 2-minute video on our website, which I can share as well. It's
Perfect.
animated and fun. So it's not boring and heavy, but it explains all this. And I still to normalize grief for any loss. That's my number one. And my number two is to normalize that, guess what? Somebody who's watching this has either been temporarily displaced themselves or they know somebody, right?
Yeah.
How many of us don't know somebody that's had that experience?
Yeah.
Right. And so what you're just saying is like, let's destigmatize this. The more we normalize this and say, hey, everybody at some point is going to know somebody or they're going to have this happen to them. It is part of life. It's part of
Yes.
life to have loss. So instead of being like, let's go in a corner and hide out, okay, I need help. And the second part to that, Nicole, is trust. So if it's not the liaison in the school, you don't know them because the liaison in every single school is different,
Okay.
unfortunately. One school, it's the superintendent. Another school, it's the nurse. Another school, it's the front desk, office manager.
Right.
Okay. It's different. And so they have another role besides that. So if you don't feel comfortable going to the liaison, go to a teacher that you trust, go to a counselor that you trust. And if you don't, if that's still not okay, bring someone with you so you can have a witness to share because it is very emotional. And it makes sense why it would be hard to come forward and say, hey, I need help. My
Yeah.
kid's struggling. So yeah.
Of course. I mean, and you're talking about a lot of issues in the course of, implementing this policy, right? I mean, you're talking about housing status. You're talking about, the needs of a family, and a lot of that goes back to the nature of, what caused the instability in the first place. Those are all really personal things.
Right.
Um, and so we're here talking about this because you're seeking to raise awareness of this law.
Absolutely.
From what I understand, people don't know about it. So I guess like why is that? I mean, I know you just said that, the McKinney-Vento liaison in your school is incredibly important piece of implementing this law. But a lot of teachers we know, like I'd never heard of it, and I consider myself a policy wonk on a lot of this stuff. So does every school have like a designated McKinney-Vento liaison? So they're
Yes.
required by,
By law, by
okay,
law. And this is again, so this is also, so where I was teaching last in Hunterdon County was
mhm,
on the border of Pennsylvania.
okay,
And so if a student would have this happen in there, it crosses state lines. So it's the
yes,
same thing. If they had like a fire or natural, like Lambertville, natural disaster, flooding a lot.
mhm,
Okay. And sometimes the families cross the bridge and they'll go to New Hope. Well,
yep,
transportation has to be provided for them, clothing, all that other good stuff. So yes, it is mandated. Every school has a liaison. And I think the reason that it hasn't been brought up is for many, many different reasons. So first of all, let me just say, it's grant funded and it's a
okay,
very competitive grant. Okay. So, the region that I'm with right now, they've been awarded the grant,
okay,
the school district, it's Bergen County Special Services.
okay,
Diane DiRuggiero, she's the director. I call her the Library of McKinney-Vento because she's been doing this for like 10 years plus.
okay,
The thing is that, and a couple things. One is that we need more staff.
okay,
So before I came along, she had one other person with her. who's a bilingual specialist for Spanish speaking families.
Okay.
Because that's another whole conversation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so it was just the two of them for the last, I think, 3 years, 4 years. My apologies, Marcia, doing 6 counties. When I say doing 6 counties, that means training the liaisons, making sure that they're, in compliant, also dealing with the organizations that support the families,
Yes.
also supporting the families, and then the different cases were like, wait, is this McKinney-Vento or not? It's on the fine line. So 6 counties, it's over 200 something districts, right? So that's part one. So before Masi came along, Diane was doing it for all those counties by herself, 6
Yeah,
counties.
that's a lot.
And each county, I think this is the other part. And again, so this is another reason why I bring awareness to it, because again, hello, parents out there in parent world, you speaking up and saying that we need more support in this is going to help to make this, bring more awareness to this law. Okay. So the other part of it is so the American Rescue Act, thank you very much, is what got me to become a navigator to help out. So 2 navigators were hired. And one went for 3 counties, and then I got the other 3 counties. That grant finished. So guess what? There's no more navigator. And so it goes back to just Diane and Maciel. I got funding again. I did 1 county, focused in on all that last month. And then this, from now until December, hopefully I'll be doing Hunterdon County. So it's all because of the grant funding stream. It depends where that goes. So that's
now it's incumbent upon whom to, make the grant application.
Oh, so that's a good, so what happens is that it's the Department of Education. And so it trickles from the federal government. They say, here's some money, right? And they base that money, this is the important part, they base that money that they give on the New Jersey SMART count, on counting and identifying McKinney-Vento children and families. So that is why it is so important that if you are McKinney-Vento eligible, please raise your hand so that you can be counted and that there'll be more funding stream for next year. So if it's not counted, if there's 20 and only one's been counted, they only get for 1 next year. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. What I was thinking was that, well, is there an instance where, there's a community that has tons of children that are eligible for this program, but because they're unaware and because we don't really know about it, they probably aren't getting the grant funding and they're probably going completely underserved. I mean, is that happening?
So then that's where each county and each region director has to talk with the state coordinator and say, what are we going to do about this? So there's meetings, I think every week, with the state. And they're great with communicating with each other and making it happen that's so yeah, it's pretty powerful. And I think the last reason too is just because, again, every school district has a liaison in the United States of America. Each state does it differently.
Yeah.
Okay. And every liaison has a different role in addition to being a liaison. It's not a dedicated liaison role.
Okay.
So suppose you're like the director of special education, right? You're doing all of that and everything we're talking about.
Yes, that's a lot.
Okay. So, and that it's a lot, and that's the reason why as a navigator for myself, I go as many times as I can provide support for those liaisons and saying, hey, what's going on here? What do you need? Oh, I don't know enough resources on clothing, or we're getting a lot of families that they have babies. And is there a place that that has free diapers? So that's the other roles navigator. It's to connect the different counties and send resources to them so that they don't have to go searching for themselves. And so I also do trainings for the different organizations. And this is another thing, parents and families too. There's Children's Interagency Council. It's called Kayak.
Okay.
That agency has all of these different, they call non-LEAs, social service organizations. If you know of anybody who needs help, just Google it, and it's there for children. And you can attend a meeting or ask, you have to be asked to attend a meeting. And if you have something that you think could benefit children, you can bring it to them as well. So there's so much out there, Nicole, that I didn't know as an educator,
Yeah.
but you get slammed, and there's a 20-minute video everybody's required to watch every year. But there's so much, every school district is different. As you
Yeah.
know, living in New Jersey, like you just said, Colts Neck is very different than New Brunswick, which is very different than Phillipsburg. That's very different. So the training is a general training, but
Mhm.
it's not county specific. So if you're a navigator like myself, you get to know the counties, and then you do the training, the extra training, a little differently, whether it's a
For each
school
one.
that's 135 kids versus a school that has like 2,000 kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are the reasons why I think a lot of us don't know about it. It's like the overwhelm, it's a funding stream, it's the support of the role itself. So yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, we're here in New Jersey, but as you mentioned, every state kind of does this differently.
Yeah.
In your experience, are there states that do it incredibly well, or states that maybe need some more, you know, work in the program? I mean, what are you kind of seeing?
That's a
Have you
great
looked at others?
question. That's something I'm not doing this long enough. That would be a Diane DiRuggiero interview. I did
Okay.
this for 10 years, but I think it's something that's why each state knows what it needs best. You're
Right.
such a condensed, diverse in many ways
Mhm.
state versus some place like Texas, let's say, which is huge, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's something to be said. And also, again, like each county is so different. Like even though I was serving Warren, Hunterdon, and Sussex County, yay, I served those three. They were three very different counties. And then when
Right.
I would go to the school districts, each one of them are different. So overall, everybody gets trained, right? And the law is the same for all children, and all of that is the same. And you go to, it's called schoolhouseconnection.org, and National Association for Our Homeless Children. Those are Nishi and Schoolhouse Connection are like the federal umbrellas.
Yes.
Any parent can go on there and check it out. And if you're like in another state, if you happen to watch this, and I can give that information as well, all of the heads for each state, and then they can
Perfect.
connect with them. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more information, the better in this
Yeah.
instance. When I release this episode, I usually have it with a Substack post, and I love to post resources for people who are interested in this issue and want to learn more. So all the information, we can provide. I'd love to. And you've hit on this a few times throughout our discussion, but what are, some things folks could do to support this program? I know, we're here today to raise awareness about it. But like, what are some pieces of advice for parents? I mean, should they just, ask their school, do they have a McKinney-Vento liaison? Who is it? We're voting in November. Is this a program that is automatically funded? Do we need to make sure that we're voting for people that are going to support the program at the federal
That's
level?
I really appreciate you asking that. Yes, yes, yes. Um, because again, like right now myself, I was under the American Rescue Act, right? Okay, so now I'm under McKinney-Vento. So I can't do it all. I can't, and if there's not going to be funding, okay, then I really, really, really need everybody's help.
Mhm.
And not just me, of course, all of us who work in the McKinney-Vento world. So that's one. So yes, please, please, please. And I think this is the thing. Remember, parents, your voice so matters and it will be heard. One is definitely, go speak to your schools and say, okay, where can you show me on the website? You can start this. Can you show me on your website information about McKinney-Vento, right? And if they don't know, and just say, who can I speak with? Who's the liaison for McKinney-Vento? And I will have those lists. Again, you can find your county, find your school. Number two is it's not just for you. It's for someone else who, again, I have my master's degree in education and I didn't know about this. How about for a family who, maybe they are not educated in college, but they want to help, they need help and they don't know where to go. So one is having that, who's that person, putting it on the website. The other thing, back to school nights. So I went to Warren County. My car turned over 200,000 miles, but that's okay because I went to as many back to school nights as I can. So ask for your back to school nights for that liaison to be identified. They identify, the school nurse, who's new on staff, superintendent, and then flyers. Like I handed out flyers and I didn't say, you look like somebody who can use this. No, we just, as we were saying before, normalize it.
Yeah.
Hey, if you know anybody, here's
Mhm.
the parent flyer with information about McKinney-Vento. Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was great. And then I would say, lastly is so important is trust. Who's your trust person? Who do you feel safe with? And if you know somebody who could use McKinney-Vento, can you go with them as an ally and a support and say, hey, they're struggling. We want to be identified as McKinney-Vento for funding, not just for ourselves, but for next year, right? So we want to be counted and where are the resources for that? And every county in New Jersey has what's called coordinated entry, and coordinated entry can help as well. So yeah, I'll put that in the link too.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for all of this information. I think, people are going to learn a lot from this episode, and I think it's really great that you're speaking out and you guys have the foresight to realize that this law really only works when people are aware of it so that they can utilize it, um, especially if it's going to be based on a count. Counting, people that are experiencing housing instability has been a problem, I think, since, people collected data on it. I mean, that's always been a really difficult issue in the policy world is actually quantifying it. So I think, given the importance of this program and the necessity of making sure it's both, understood, known about, utilized so that it can continue. Hopefully, we can kind of get some movement in the right direction for you here. And I really look forward to kind of staying in touch and following this. So you mentioned that the American Recovery Act is the last grant funding. Quickly, could you just tell us like how long does that funding go through? And then like when is the next kind of like funding opportunity, if you will? What does that look
The
like?
American Rescue Act, and there's
Rest-
American Rescue Act 1 and 2.
Okay.
And that's the other thing too. Each of those have different uh qualifiers to them.
Mhm.
So one of them is like it has to be direct service to the kids, meaning like direct programming, like maybe running, grief and loss support programming. Okay, which is
Yeah.
something I'm in the works with right now, which is very exciting. Another one, it can be doing education for parents and kids. So each one is different. Right now, I know that they just finished a 3-year grant cycle, and they're going to be starting a new one for our county. That's something I don't have the information on, but I can get that for you guys through my director, Diane Virgio.
Perfect. Yes, please do. I'd love to kind of stay apprised of the funding status of the program. And, um, as I always tell people, when you need someone to call their rep, let me know and I'll make sure everyone knows like when they need to advocate.
Yeah.
Because I think this is so important. And a lot of the parents I talk to, we talk about these issues and we think on the day to day, just like going to work and packing lunches, yada, yada, yada. I mean, you put so much into parenting and you just want your kids to just be happy, feel safe.
Yes.
I can't imagine how hard it has to be when you're facing some of these obstacles to kind of like show up and be there. So this program seems like it's really critical to families and children, like when they need it most. So I really hope we can like spread some awareness
Yes.
and we can get some people to advocate and get, behind this program.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And just remember, nobody plans on being homeless and nobody wants.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
thank you for the preventative, everyone out there. And thank you so much, Nicole, for creating this space. You making my dream come true. right? So my car can last a little longer too, because this will get out more. And I look forward to the day where it sounds terrible, but maybe I don't have this job anymore, that it's not needed because there's enough awareness out there and it's done. So this is the beginning of all that. I'm so excited. So thank
Well,
you.
I would love it if we didn't need these services, right? It'd be great to
Right.
get to a place where housing instability is not such, a prevalent issue. But where we are right now with the cost of living and I think, economic inequality and all of those things, um, this is really an important program for kids who need it. And this is an investment in our future, right? Our kids are the future. And that's
Yeah.
really what this is about. This is about investing in children who, through no fault of their own,
Correct.
are just in a tough spot, and we need to invest in them, right?
That's
So,
great. Yes, we
all
invest in
right.
them and we invest in our communities because they'll stay in school. One of the top absentee reasons for absenteeism has to do with being temporarily housed. So yeah,
Well,
so
there you have it.
I want them to stay in school because then our communities thrive. So yes, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank
Thank
you, everybody.
you. Thank you so much. And everyone listening, just take a look at the Substack post so you get all the information you need about this program and ways you can help. So thank you again.